for this one coveted spot, the host of The Tonight Show. It was the holy grail of comedians that it would be passed on to. So obviously it's the Super Bowl trophy. They both want it. And I don't know. I find something wrong about the hatred of the people who, oh, you just went for it and got it and won. And then, by the way, he was like number one. They fired him twice for the sin of being number one in his time slot. I mean, it's not like
I don't know if that's why they fired him, but yeah.
Well, they fired him because they thought, well, we better look out. Why? Because he was such a hard guy to work with?
No, I just think they saw Fallon surging, and they saw that as the immediate future.
Jimmy Kimmel and Jay Leno, two names that instantly bring to mind the world of late-night television and the battles for the coveted Tonight Show desk. Leno, long known for his mainstream appeal and broad humor, was the center of one of the most controversial shakeups in television history when he was pushed out of The Tonight Show in 2009, only to reclaim it months later in a move that left Conan O'Brien sidelined. But while the drama between Leno and O'Brien is well documented, a lesser-known chapter of that saga involved Jimmy Kimmel, whose own late-night career intersected with Leno's in unexpected ways. Leno's first exit and Tonight Show's succession crisis.
Complicated than that.
Well, tell me what it. Well, tell me the complicated part.
Well, there's a couple of things. I mean, first of all, Conan wanted the 11:30 spot, and he went to NBC and said, "I want the 11:30 spot. If I don't get the 11:30 spot, I'm going to become a free agent, and other networks are going to offer me the 11:30 spot," which was happening, by the way. You know, something that was happening.
Right.
And NBC said, "Listen, we want to keep Jay on. We want you to be the 11:30 host. What we'll do is we'll make a deal in 5 years. We'll give you the Tonight Show."
Jay Leno had been the face of the Tonight Show for nearly 2 decades when NBC announced in 2004 that he would step down in 5 years to make way for Conan O'Brien. The network wanted to keep both stars happy. Leno had kept the Tonight Show at the top of the ratings, but O'Brien, the host of Late Night, was a rising star with a dedicated fan base. NBC's decision to set a transition plan so far in advance was meant to create a smooth handoff, but it ultimately led to chaos. When the transition finally took place in 2009, O'Brien struggled to retain Leno's massive audience. At the same time, Leno was moved to primetime with The Jay Leno Show, a 10 p.m. program that quickly flopped in the ratings. NBC, desperate to salvage both situations, proposed an unconventional solution, cutting The Tonight Show down to half an hour and airing it after a half-hour version of Leno's show at 11:35. This move would effectively have demoted O'Brien. Unwilling to accept the change, O'Brien rejected the plan and walked away from NBC with a $45 million payout. Leno reclaimed The Tonight Show in 2010, but the damage to his reputation was done. His return was met with backlash, and many saw him as the villain in the debacle. Among his loudest critics was Jimmy Kimmel, who had idolized David Letterman and viewed Leno as someone who repeatedly undermined his peers for personal gain. Kimmel's feud with Leno and the ABC dilemma.
There was a time where the ratings between those shows were getting close, which is very unusual.
It speaks to the need in this business. Kids, if you're watching and you want to get in the business, you need someone talking for you, an agent, a manager, somebody, because Jay Leno had no one speaking for him. He was his own representative. Whereas I think it was Ari Emanuel, one of the great talkers of all time and great people, I love him. I think he was in the ear of the NBC exec saying, "You need to think about the future."
In 2008, as NBC was preparing to transition Leno out of The Tonight Show, Leno entertained the idea of jumping to ABC. At the time, Jimmy Kimmel was firmly established in the network's late-night slot with Jimmy Kimmel Live. When Leno began negotiating with ABC, the network considered moving Kimmel's show to a later time to accommodate Leno at 11:30 p.m. Leno personally reached out to Kimmel to gauge his reaction. According to Leno, Kimmel was agreeable to the idea, believing it could benefit him by providing a stronger lead-in. However, after NBC ultimately convinced Leno to stay, Leno never followed up with Kimmel, leaving him in the dark. Kimmel later admitted he felt slighted, saying he had trusted Leno to keep him informed, but instead, Leno's lack of communication came off as deceptive. Over the years, Kimmel did not hold back his disdain for Leno, mocking him on air and making it clear that he sided with O'Brien in the late-night wars. His most famous jab came during an appearance on Leno's short-lived 10 p.m. show, where Kimmel openly mocked Leno's handling of The Tonight Show debacle to his face. The tense exchange made headlines and cemented Kimmel's reputation as one of Leno's fiercest critics. The final push.
Well, it's the shakeup that's been in the works for weeks, and it's the top of the pulse this morning.
Yeah, we are talking about the next chapter for the famed Tonight Show. Jimmy Fallon getting the reins of the show early next year. It's a move supported by current host Jay Leno. At least that's what they're saying. All the late night guys weighed in on the changes overnight.
You guys probably heard the news. I'm going to be taking over for the Tonight Show next February. But don't worry, until February, our focus is right here on whatever this show is called.
Despite regaining The Tonight Show in 2010, Leno's reign was never the same. The controversy surrounding his return alienated younger viewers, and by 2013, NBC was eyeing another transition, this time to Jimmy Fallon. Late-night television was changing, with younger hosts like Fallon and Kimmel embracing viral content, social media engagement, and a more casual, digital-friendly style. NBC recognized that Fallon's popularity with younger demographics made him the future of late night. Unlike the previous transition, NBC had learned from its mistakes. This time, they didn't set a 5-year transition period. They moved quickly, announcing in 2013 that Leno would leave The Tonight Show in early 2014, with Fallon set to take over. Though Leno's second departure was framed as amicable, the reality was clear. NBC had fired him. The network had grown tired of the baggage that came with keeping Leno in the spotlight. He had survived one major scandal, but this time he had no allies left in the network willing to fight for him. Kimmel, who had long believed Leno was unfairly holding on to his late-night throne, saw the move as vindication. When Fallon officially took over, Kimmel celebrated the changing of the guard, acknowledging that while Leno had been successful, Leno's apology to Kimmel.
I called Jimmy Kimmel and I said, I'm getting offers from ABC. I don't want to start a whole thing here. If they're talking to put me on 11:30, would you want to go on at 12:30? I think he said, yeah, he'd like to. I said, oh, okay. We became friends. And then that didn't happen, and it became public. And I suppose I should have called Jimmy and explained to him again, but I didn't. I don't know why I didn't. I just didn't. I thought he'd probably figure it out. But I think maybe he was hurt by that, and I apologize to him for that.
Years after the dust settled, Leno addressed his long-standing rift with Kimmel. In an appearance on Bill Maher's podcast, Leno acknowledged that he should have handled things differently. He admitted he should have followed up with Kimmel about the ABC discussions and even apologized, though he stopped short of taking full responsibility for his past actions. Kimmel, for his part, has since softened his stance, admitting that he no longer holds a grudge. However, the history between them remains a reminder of how cutthroat the late-night world can be. The battles for The Tonight Show may be in the past, but the drama surrounding it continues to be a cautionary tale of what happens when egos, network politics, and shifting media landscapes collide. Ultimately, Leno's firing from The Tonight Show wasn't just about ratings or changing demographics. It was about a network that had grown weary of the drama and a new generation of hosts ready to redefine late-night television. Leno's complicated relationship with David Letterman.
You know, it's just one of those awkward situations where he was a huge Letterman guy.
Yes.
And when
Still
Letterman
is.
didn't get to Tonight Show, somehow it was my fault. And I
Right.
think he resented that, and I get that. But, you know, Dave never had the Tonight Show.
What?
No.
Maybe I'm remembering these wars wrong.
Here's the situation.
I conflate this with the first Iraq War.
One of the underlying tensions in the late-night landscape was Jay Leno's long and complicated history with David Letterman. Before the Tonight Show fiasco with Conan O'Brien, Leno had already been at the center of a late-night controversy when he was chosen over Letterman to succeed Johnny Carson in 1992. Letterman, who'd been hosting Late Night with David Letterman on NBC, was widely expected to be Carson's natural successor. Even Carson himself reportedly favored Letterman. However, NBC executives saw Leno as the safer, more mainstream choice and ultimately awarded him the coveted 11:30 slot. This decision sparked one of the most infamous rivalries in television history. Letterman left NBC and launched The Late Show on CBS, going head-to-head with Leno for the next 2 decades. Though Letterman's show was often considered more critically acclaimed, Leno consistently won the ratings war. The tension between the two never fully subsided, and Letterman frequently took shots at Leno, particularly during the Conan O'Brien debacle. For Jimmy Kimmel, who idolized Letterman and viewed him as the true heir to Carson, Leno's history of maneuvering behind the scenes only added to his distrust of the comedian. Even after Leno's second departure from The Tonight Show, his relationship with Letterman remained icy. When Letterman retired in 2015, he didn't invite Leno as a guest, and Leno, in turn, was noticeably absent from the farewell tributes. The bitterness that started in the early 90s persisted for decades, reinforcing the perception that Leno was willing to do whatever it took to remain in control of The Tonight Show. The changing landscape of late night. Leno's final exit from The Tonight Show in 2014 was more than just a personal loss. It signaled a shift in the late-night industry. During his tenure, Leno had dominated in traditional TV ratings, but by the late 2010s, late-night programming was rapidly evolving. Social media and streaming services were beginning to outshine linear television, and younger audiences were consuming content in completely new ways. Hosts like Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, and later James Corden understood this shift and built their shows around viral moments. Fallon's Tonight Show leaned heavily into games, celebrity sketches, and musical performances tailor-made for YouTube. Kimmel embraced digital culture with segments like Mean Tweets, and Corden's Carpool Karaoke became a global phenomenon. Even today, the legacy of the transition continues to shape late-night television. Traditional ratings have steadily declined, and networks are increasingly prioritizing online engagement. Now it's time to hear from you. Do you think NBC made the right call in replacing Jay Leno with Jimmy Fallon? Let us know in the comments section below.